Part 1. They say you remember the little things at the beginning of the end. I remember the smell of rain-soaked asphalt when I pulled into our driveway that night. The way the porch light flickered and buzzed, struggling against the storm. I remember thinking how warm the house looked from the outside, golden windows glowing against the black sky, and how that warmth made me feel oddly cold. Her name is Betty. We'd been married 9 years. Owned the same little house in a sleepy New Hampshire town where nothing exciting ever happened, unless you counted the yearly pumpkin festival or the occasional stray bear sniffing at garbage cans. I worked as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company. Betty worked at the local hospital, a nurse in the maternity ward. We had a life that people envied. Rock solid, my brother Thomas used to say, clapping me on the back at family barbecues. You're the lucky one, Christopher. Yeah, real lucky. That night, our 9th anniversary, I got home early. I'd spent a week planning it. Dinner reservations at the restaurant where we first met, a weekend trip booked up the coast, even a new necklace tucked into my jacket pocket, white gold with a tiny diamond, nothing flashy, but meaningful. Just because kind of gift. Thank you for surviving life with me kind of thing. The first thing I noticed when I walked in was the silence. No smell of dinner. No music playing. Just the TV humming low in the living room. Some talk show where the laughter sounded canned and desperate. I found her curled up on the couch, still in scrubs, scrolling mindlessly through her phone. Hey, babe, I said, smiling, heart racing a little. I reached for my jacket, ready to pull out the necklace. She barely looked up. Hey. No, happy anniversary. No smile. Not even a damn blink. Tough shift? I asked, easing onto the couch beside her. Yeah, she muttered, thumbing the screen like it owed her money. I waited for her to say something, anything, that would make the gnawing unease in my chest go away. After a minute, I gave up and slid the little box from my pocket, resting it on her thigh. What's this? She said, frowning. Just open it. She did. Stared at the necklace like it was a dead bug. Oh, that's sweet, Christopher. She set it on the coffee table without even trying it on. Did you forget? I asked, voice low. Forget what? Today. Betty blinked, the realization slowly dawning on her face. Oh, crap. Our anniversary. She said it like she'd forgotten a dentist appointment. I'm sorry, she added quickly, leaning over to kiss my cheek. Her lips barely brushed my skin. Work's just been crazy. Crazy. That word stuck with me. It didn't fit. Nothing about Betty's work had been crazy lately. She'd even been picking up extra shifts, she said, saving for a new kitchen remodel. Later that night, after she went to take a long shower, I sat alone in the living room and thought about how many long showers she'd been taking lately. Then the phone buzzed on the coffee table. Betty had forgotten to take it with her. For a full minute, I just stared at it. The screen lit up with a name. Thomas. My brother. Yo, you good? The message read. Another buzz. Can't wait. I swallowed hard. Forced myself to breathe. It's innocent, I told myself. Thomas was my best friend, too. Maybe he was talking about our planned fishing trip next month. Maybe he. The phone buzzed again. This time, a heart emoji. The air in the room changed, turned thick and sour. I put the phone down carefully, like it was a bomb. When Betty came out of the shower, she smelled different. Not bad. Just not her usual vanilla lotion. Something heavier. Muskio. You okay? She asked, toweling her hair. Yeah, I lied, smiling. Just tired. That night, I barely slept. I lay there beside her, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, and felt like I was drowning in a lake of concrete. The next morning, she left early for an overtime shift. Thomas, conveniently, couldn't make brunch like we planned. I told myself it was nothing. I clung to that thought like a drowning man clings to driftwood. But deep down, the seed had been planted, and it was already growing roots. I started noticing things. Little things. Betty's extra shifts that didn't show up on her pay stubs. Thomas's sudden new hobby of hiking alone. The way Betty would get a text and smile, that secret, soft smile she used to save for me. One night, while she was asleep, I checked her phone. Found a hidden app disguised as a notes widget. Inside it was a secret chat. Her and Thomas. Messages that blurred every boundary, every vow, every piece of my trust. Jokes only lovers would make. Plans. Memories. I was losing her. Maybe I already had, but I wasn't ready to believe it. Not yet. Not until the night I decided to dig deeper. Not until the night I realized that the worst betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people you trusted with your whole damn soul. Part 2. People say trust is a glass you can't piece back together once it's shattered. I used to think that was poetic nonsense. Now I know it's just physics. After that night, after the secret chat and the heart emojis from my own brother, something inside me flipped. I didn't rage. I didn't confront. I simply observed. Betty was still Betty on the surface. Sweet, affectionate in that half their way. She made coffee in the mornings, left Post-its on the fridge, pick up milk, smiley face, and love you. Little crumbs of normalcy I used to devour. Now, they tasted like ash in my mouth. I started with her phone. She'd gotten cagey, carrying it everywhere. Bathroom. Laundry room. Once, she even tucked it into the waistband of her leggings while scrubbing the kitchen floor. She was never that attached to it before. One night, while she slept, phone wedged under her pillow, I installed a simple Bluetooth sniffer app onto my laptop. If the phone was close enough, I could mirror notifications. Harmless enough, in theory. Terrifying in practice. By day, I compared stories. Had a rough shift, she'd say, dropping her bag by the door, fake exhaustion painting her features. Funny. The hospital parking log didn't show her car entering or exiting that night. Another time, she told me she was working late covering a friend's shift. I checked that friend's Instagram. She was posting margaritas and beach sunsets 2 states away. When I asked Betty casually, "How's Janice holding up at work?" she barely flinched. "Oh, fine. Overworked. Per thing. A lie. Clean. Smooth. Professional grade lying." It made my skin crawl. I confronted her once. Lightly. We were folding laundry, watching one of those mindless reality shows she loved. I asked, "You and Thomas talked lately?" "Haven't seen him around much." Her hands froze mid-fold on a sweatshirt. Just for a second. "Yeah, you know Tommy," she said, too brightly. "Busy with his job. Dating around, I guess." I nodded like I believed her. Like I didn't already know she had lunch with him 2 days ago. Same diner she and I used to haunt during our broke newlywed days. I even knew what she ordered, the Cobb salad, dressing on the side. I saw it on the receipt she crumpled and tossed into the bathroom trash. Still, I hesitated. Because here's the sick part about betrayal, you don't want it to be real. You'd rather be crazy. You'd rather look in the mirror and see a paranoid fool than a man whose wife and brother are smiling at each other over secret candlelight. But it was getting harder to ignore. The Bluetooth sniffer picked up dozens of notifications, most of them hidden inside that fake notes app. Cute little phrases. "Can't stop thinking about last night, Red Heart. Next time, let's not be so loud, LOL. I miss you." Counting the minutes. Each time my laptop chirped with a new ping, it felt like another nail being driven through my ribs. Still, I said nothing. I played my role. Loyal husband. Loving brother. Gullible idiot. Then came the second confrontation. It was late, almost midnight, when Betty stumbled in through the front door, heels in one hand, jacket in the other. She reeked of alcohol and something heavier. Something floral and unfamiliar. "Girls' night ran long," she slurred, dropping her purse on the floor. I helped her to the couch, sitting her down gently. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand the truth. Instead, I asked, "Who all was there?" She waved a hand lazily. "You know. The usual." I listed names off, watching her face. "Lisa. Dana. Jen." She nodded at random, disconnected. At one point, she nodded at the name of a woman who'd moved to Florida 6 months ago. "Yeah, Lisa was hilarious tonight," she said, chuckling to herself. I smiled, kissed her forehead, tucked her under a blanket. Then I grabbed her purse and rifled through it while she dozed. No receipts. No event flyers. Just a room key card. One of those generic white plastic ones from a mid-range hotel. A hotel downtown. I pocketed it and didn't say a word. By morning, she acted like nothing happened. Made pancakes. Wore my old college hoodie like she always did on lazy Sundays. But I knew better now. I drove to that hotel while she ran errands. I walked up to the front desk, gave a fake name, spun some story about a lost friend. Slipped the key card across the counter. The kid at the desk looked bored until he scanned it. Room 415. Reserved for Thomas Marshall. Reserved 2 days ago. Still active. My stomach bottomed out. It felt like someone had kicked me down an elevator shaft. I left before anyone could see my face crack. Back home, Betty greeted me at the door, bright-eyed, holding out a paper bag. "That your favorite?" she chirped. "Italian hoagie from Pasquale's." I took the bag. Nodded. Forced a smile so tight it made my teeth ache. Later, While she showered, I sat on the porch, staring at the horizon. Everything inside me screamed to confront her. To confront Thomas. To tear the entire rotten structure down. But I stayed still. Because now I wasn't just gathering proof. I was building a case. Betty had no idea. Neither did Thomas. They thought I was still blind. But I was already seeing everything. And worse, I was starting to see that the affair might be just the tip of the iceberg. There were things they were hiding. Things that went deeper than stolen kisses and hotel rooms. And when I finally uncovered it all, it wouldn't just break my heart. It would burn my entire goddamn world to the ground. Part 3. The mind plays cruel tricks when it's desperate to survive. I told myself maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe Betty and Thomas had drifted into some boundaryless friendship. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was wrong. But paranoia doesn't rent hotel rooms under your brother's name. It doesn't leave lipstick smudges on shirts you've never seen him wear. It doesn't explain secret chats, key cards, and the sick, giddy smiles they exchanged when they thought no one was watching. No, deep down, I knew. Still, there's a difference between knowing something and seeing it. It was a Wednesday. Rain again, hammering the pavement in frantic fingers. Betty had texted me that morning, saying she had a double shift and wouldn't be home until late. Thomas, conveniently, had meetings out of town. Sure. I left work early. Told my boss I had the stomach flu. Drove around town for 2 hours, hands white-knuckling the steering wheel. Every street felt too narrow. Every light too long. Around 7:30, I parked a block away from our house and waited. Betty's car was already in the driveway. So was Thomas's pickup truck, the one with the dented bumper he never got around to fixing. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I slipped around back. Used the key hidden under the third flower pot. Same spot since we moved in. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No TV. No music. No clatter of dishes. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost. The dining table was empty except for 2 wine glasses, half full, beads of condensation still sliding down their sides. My feet carried me down the hallway, heart thudding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. The bedroom door was half open. And that's when I saw them. Thomas, naked as the day he was born, his mouth pressed against Betty's stomach, hands tracing the curves I used to know better than my own reflection. Betty, tangled in sheets, laughing breathlessly, her head thrown back in abandon. It hit me in waves. First rage, a pure, blinding whiteout that made my fingers curl into fists. Then grief, raw and savage, clawing up from my gut. Then nothing, a cold, hollow space where my heart used to be. They didn't see me. I watched for 1 full minute. Maybe more. Long enough to burn the image into my skull until I could taste it like copper on my tongue. Then I backed away. Quiet. Controlled. Almost clinical. I left the house. Got into my car. Drove 5 miles to a gas station and sat there in the dark, staring at the rain sliding down the windshield. I should have screamed. Should have punched the steering wheel until the bones in my hand snapped. Should have driven back and ripped them both out of the house by their hair. But I didn't. I sat there, hands limp on my thighs, letting the betrayal soak into my skin. When my breathing finally evened out, I pulled out my phone. I already had the spy app installed on Betty's device. With a few clicks, I activated her camera remotely. I saw Thomas climbing out of bed, pulling on his jeans, laughing as Betty tossed a pillow at him. I took screenshots. 30, 40, 50. Pictures that told a story no lawyer, no judge, no jury could deny. I forwarded every image to a burner email account I created for this purpose alone. Evidence. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was gathering ammunition. That weekend, I hired a private investigator. Paid in cash. Gave him Betty's work schedule, Thomas's habits, and the license plates of both cars. You sure you want everything? He asked, watching me over the rim of his coffee cup. Everything, I said. He nodded grimly. It's gonna hurt. It already does, I said. While the PI got to work, I started preparing in other ways. Bank accounts. Passwords. Legal consultations. Quiet moves, piece by piece, like assembling a bomb in slow motion. I transferred half our joint savings into a separate account under my name. Froze her access quietly, claiming fraud suspicion when the bank asked questions. I contacted a divorce lawyer, a pit bull recommended by a friend who had clawed his way through an ugly split. We met in a strip mall office that smelled faintly of sweat and printer ink. Infidelity cases are like Christmas for us, he said, eyes gleaming. Especially if we have pictures, texts, videos. We have everything, I said. Still, I didn't rage, didn't weep, didn't break anything. I smiled politely. Shook his hand. The PI delivered within days. Photos of Thomas and Betty in another hotel. In his truck, parked behind the hospital. Leaving a sleazy bar at midnight, hand in hand, laughing like teenagers. One photo hit harder than the rest. Betty wearing the necklace I gave her on our anniversary. The one she hadn't even pretended to like. While sitting half in Thomas's lap, lips brushing his ear. The rage flared again, sharp and sudden. But I pushed it down. Buried it deep. Because rage is messy. Rage makes you stupid. I wasn't going to destroy myself just to make them bleed. No, I was going to be surgical. Precise. I would cut them both out of my life with the steady, ruthless hand of a man who had nothing left to lose. At home, Betty kissed me goodnight like nothing had changed. Long day, she whispered against my cheek. Yeah, I whispered back. I watched her walk down the hallway, hips swaying lazily in the soft light. I said nothing, but inside, the plans were already forming. I was going to end this, on my terms, and when I was finished, they would never see me coming. Part 4. There's a particular silence that comes right before you ruin someone. It's not peaceful. It's not angry. It's surgical. That was the silence I carried with me for weeks after seeing Betty and Thomas together, after hiring the PI, after stockpiling evidence so heavy it could crush a mountain. I could have ended it right then, called her out, thrown her into the street, disowned Thomas with a few well-placed fists. But I waited, because something still gnawed at me, low and ugly. The money. It wasn't just the affair. It was the sudden way our finances had shifted these past 6 months. The way Betty insisted on taking over the household budgeting to help with my stress. The mysterious charges. The investment opportunities she brushed off as nothing important. I dug deeper. Quietly, I pulled every bank statement, every credit card report, every insurance policy we had. And there it was. Betty hadn't just been screwing my brother. She'd been draining our accounts behind my back. Small at first, transfers to a new savings account in both her and Thomas's names. Then bigger moves, a second mortgage application I never signed, a secret withdrawal from my retirement fund, all leading up to a hefty life insurance policy she'd renewed just a month ago. On me, double indemnity in case of accidental death. Beneficiary, Betty Marshall. I sat in the dark that night, reading through the documents, feeling a different kind of cold settle over me. She wasn't just betraying me. She was preparing for life without me. A wealthy life. The realization didn't break me. It honed me. I started playing the perfect husband again. The attentive, trusting fool. Smiled when Betty kissed me goodbye. Laughed at Thomas's lame jokes when we accidentally bumped into each other at family dinners. Inside, I was already building the guillotine they would both fall into. I worked with my lawyer quietly, assembling a mountain of evidence. Not just of the affair, but of financial fraud, conspiracy to commit marital theft, and potential insurance fraud. A single affair could be excused, overlooked by the courts if she cried hard enough. But fraud? Collusion? That tore apart every shred of her legal advantage. And then came the day I pulled the trigger. I chose Betty's birthday party. She threw it herself, of course, rented out the back room of her favorite wine bar downtown, invited all our friends, family, co-workers, including Thomas. Perfect. I arrived early, calm, focused, wearing my best suit and the coldest smile I could manage. Betty beamed when she saw me, kissed me lightly, tasting of champagne and pretense. "You're so good to me," she purred. "Always," I said. The party was in full swing when I raised my glass. "Everyone," I said, voice cutting clean through the noise. "I just want to say a few words about my incredible wife." Betty preened under the spotlight, giggling. Thomas looked mildly alarmed. "Good." I cleared my throat. "Marriage is about trust," I said. "About partnership. About building a life together." I turned, locking eyes with Betty. Which is why it's so devastating when the person you trust most decides to tear it all apart. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Murmurs stirred. "Betty," I said, pulling out the thick manila folder from my jacket. "For your birthday, I'm giving you the gift of honesty." I tossed the folder onto the cake table. Photos spilled out. Betty tangled in Thomas's arms. Betty in the back seat of Thomas's truck. Betty signing documents with Thomas standing behind her like a shadow. Gasps rippled through the room. I wasn't finished. "You didn't just cheat," I said, voice steady. "You committed fraud. You drained our savings. You tried to ruin me. And worst of all, you were stupid enough to think I wouldn't find out. Betty went white as paper. Thomas stood there, mouth flapping silently. I continued, effective immediately, our accounts are frozen. Divorce proceedings have been filed. And a criminal investigation into financial misconduct has begun. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the floor. Betty lunged toward me, eyes wild. Christopher, wait. We can talk about this. You don't understand. I stepped back calmly. No, I said. You don't understand. You thought you were marrying a fool. Security, who I tipped off earlier, stepped in as Betty sobbed and tried to cling to me. Thomas backed away like the coward he was, already calculating his own escape route. The guests stared, some in shock, some in morbid fascination, some gleeful to see the queen bee finally crash and burn. I walked out before they could see me smile. The night air hit my face like a baptism. Free. Alive. Ruined. But rebuilding. By the time Betty's sobs faded behind me, I was already thinking ahead. The house would be sold. The assets divided, mostly in my favor, thanks to the ironclad evidence. Her nursing license would be under review once the fraud came to light. Thomas? He would lose everything too, his job, his standing, his thin thread of family loyalty. Good. They deserved to be ashes. And me? I would rise. Not because I forgave. Not because I forgot. But because survival was now my sharpest weapon. And I intended to wield it without mercy. Part 5. Freedom doesn't feel the way you think it will. It's not a fireworks show. It's not marching through the streets with a boombox on your shoulder. It's quieter. Heavier. It feels like standing in the wreckage of a house you built with your bare hands, watching the smoke curl into the sky, knowing you'll never rebuild it the same way again, and realizing, somehow, you don't even want to. The divorce was finalized 3 months after the party. Betty tried to fight it at first. Sobbed to the judge, played the victim, painted herself as confused and pressured and emotionally vulnerable. Didn't matter. The photos, the secret accounts, the forged documents, none of it left room for sympathy. She lost everything. The house went into my name. Most of the savings stayed in my accounts. Thomas tried to vanish into another state but couldn't outrun the lawsuits Betty dragged him into as she tried to claw her way out of the grave she dug. I didn't watch the fallout. Didn't need to. It was enough to know they were burning. Instead, I focused on surviving. Some days it felt like breathing through glass. Waking up alone in a bed that still smelled like her. Hearing songs in the grocery store that triggered memories like landmines. Answering questions from friends and coworkers who had no idea. But I survived. I found an apartment downtown. Sparse. Clean. Cold. It suited me. Work filled the days. Whiskey filled the nights. I wasn't chasing happiness. I was chasing silence. And after everything, that felt like enough. Then, 2 weeks ago, Betty came back. I was leaving my building when I saw her sitting on the front steps, huddled in a cheap jacket, mascara smeared from crying. Christopher, she gasped, standing up too fast. Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I said nothing. Just stared. Time hadn't been kind to her. The sparkle, the smug confidence, all of it stripped away. I made a mistake, she said, voice cracking. Thomas used me. It wasn't real. None of it was real. I let her talk. Let her spill every excuse, every half-assed apology, every twisted memory where somehow she was the victim and I was the villain for not fighting harder for us. When she finished, tears streaming down her face, she reached for my hand. Please, Christopher, she whispered. We can fix this. We can find our way back. And I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. A real smile. Small. Sad. But real. We can't, I said simply. I walked past her, down the street, never once looking back. Because the man she wanted to fix things with? He didn't exist anymore. The Christopher she destroyed in that bed, in that bank account, in that courtroom, he was dead and buried. What was left was someone else. Something else. The real twist didn't come until a week later. I met up with my old friend Evan, someone who had drifted away over the years, swallowed by work and life and distance. Over beers, he leaned in and said, Man, there's something you should know. I didn't want to tell you before, but screw it. You deserve the truth. I braced myself. Thomas and Betty, he said, they weren't just sleeping together. I frowned. What do you mean? Evan dropped the bomb. They were planning to move across the country. Start over. They used your name to apply for a business loan. Forged your signature. Betty figured once you were out of the picture, they'd have the perfect setup. Money. Fresh start. No one would question it. I stared at him, the room tilting sideways. Wait, I said slowly. Are you saying? Yeah, Evan said grimly. It wasn't just an affair, Chris. It was a goddamn heist. They were trying to erase you. Erase me. The words echoed in my head long after I left the bar. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about lust. It was about annihilation. I wasn't just collateral damage. I was the target. But here's the thing about burning a man to the ground. Sometimes you forget what rises from ashes isn't weaker. It's stronger, sharper, meaner. They thought they could end me. They thought I'd be a broken man. They didn't understand that real survival isn't about coming out clean. It's about coming out harder. Unbreakable. I don't believe in happy endings anymore. Not for people like me. There's no perfect woman waiting at the end of some long, tragic road. No bright future where betrayal doesn't sting. There's just you, your fists, your scars, and the choice to keep walking anyway. I'm not the man I was. Thank God. The old me died in that bedroom. The new me? He doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. He only moves forward. And he doesn't leave survivors. Not anymore. The end.